Elizabeth LaCoste, and I'm the principal flutist of the American Youth Symphony. Today, I'll be giving my 3 favorite tips on how to practice the opening solo to Debussy's Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. So the very first tip I want to share with you is intonation for this excerpt. So how do we do that? Now, ideally, we would have a piano where we sit at and we go note by note, comparing our tendency on our instrument to the temperament and tuning of the piano. Obviously, ideally, we want the piano to be in tune. So if you don't have a piano, that's okay. Another way that we can practice this is using drones. So to do this, using drones, I prefer to use my tuning app that's on my iPad. I use Tonal Energy, and it's really convenient because we can do those drones and play this entire excerpt set to different drones so that we have a pitch reference throughout the entire excerpt. The second tip that I'd like to share with you is discussing vibrato in this excerpt, and there's a couple different ways that I like to practice this. So when we're thinking about vibrato with the opening solo, we want to make sure that the vibrato doesn't expand or exceed the quality of sound, right? So since it's very, very soft, we don't want our vibrato to be wider than our tone quality, and that it sounds something like this. If we have too wide of a vibrato, we hear the undulations compared to the actual tone. So to get our vibrato to be inside the sound, we simply have to decrease the pressure of the undulations. So a good way to practice this is actually to practice this entire excerpt without vibrato, and that's kind of the second way that I like to practice the vibrato aspect to this excerpt. So what practicing without vibrato actually does as well is making sure that you can hear what you're doing with your phrasing and your dynamics throughout the entire excerpt. And instead of having the vibrato kind of mask some of our intonation issues potentially, as well as maybe we think our air is moving when it actually isn't, and the vibrato is sort of in the background covering that up. So by eliminating the vibrato and practicing this excerpt in this way, you can really hear what you want your phrasing to sound like. So the third and final tip that I want to talk about with you is breathing. And I'm sure that's what all of you are wondering at this point, because so often we are told it has to be done in one breath, and I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be. If you can play this solo in one breath and maintain the beauty of the quality of your sound and the intonation and all of the things that we want to encapsulate in this excerpt, and you can successfully do that in one breath, then absolutely do it. But there are a couple spots, especially in an audition when we have our nerves and our hearts racing and our lungs might be restricted, we need to make sure that we know where to breathe in case of an emergency. So there's 2 spots that we can sneak breaths in this excerpt. The first one is after the G natural in the second measure, and after the tied B natural towards the end. So those are really the only 2 spots that are semi-appropriate to take a breath. So I think it's really important that we understand that for this excerpt specifically, there's different ways that we would perform it versus an audition and a performance. You know, for a performance setting, you have to project to your audience, and you're going to need more of that tone quality. You're going to have to play it a little bit louder so that your audience can hear you. So we're going to need to maybe have that breath, and we'll have to make sure that we, take that extra breath so that we can make our phrasing beautiful and perform it to the best of our ability. Whereas in an audition, we can really harness how soft and delicate can you play this excerpt to get that dreamlike quality, which is what this piece of music is all about. We want to make sure that when we're performing this for an audition, we really want to harness those really soft, delicate colors that we can produce that are juxtaposed by those darker colors that we can experiment with at the end of the excerpt. And if you need an extra breath to do that, there's no shame in it. I know I've been on audition panels, and the best players, in my experience that I've heard play this excerpt, they take an extra breath. And there's nothing wrong, because your artistry and your musicality are more important, and you can take that extra breath to make sure that those things come across versus taking one breath and kind of struggling and playing more mechanically. We definitely want to hear more artistry. We want to hear your voice in this excerpt. I hope these practicing tips were helpful, and here at AYS we wish you all the best in your preparation for future auditions. Thank you so much for being here and tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.